Hi guys, it's Laura Volpin-Testa from Fashion Illustration Tribe, if we haven't met yet. I got some great question. Actually, it's more of a great comment yesterday about my pattern making class, which I had launched a few weeks ago, but I'm getting more questions about it now than I was at the time of the launch. And I love to welcome you into the program. So I want to tell you what this comment was. She said, I was talking about quarter scale pattern slopers. And I don't know if you know what those are. First of all, a sloper is a pattern piece that doesn't have seam allowance on it, right? So any of you who sew, I do recommend if you take the pattern making class that you've sewn even minimally. But pattern making is so much linked with the language of sewing because every pattern you make is made to be sewn. So even if all you've ever sewn is like just a sleeveless bodice with a basic neckline and maybe a dart, or just a basic skirt with an elastic waistband, anything you've sewn will give you that background that helps the pattern making course make sense. Now, certainly you could start the course anyway and then start sewing later, because the fact is with fashion, if you know what I'm talking about, just jump on in and say yeah, is that there's always, when you first start, there's always a piece that's entirely missing. There's always something you don't know yet. So it's like a path of faith where you kind of jump in, let it all, wash over you and soak in, and then little by little your skills start all interacting and building together. So, but if you've sewn something basic, it's going to help a lot. So slopers, this is tiny. This is a quarter scale sloper, which means it's a quarter of the size of a full size sloper. In the comment I got this week, someone was like, "You do your course with quarter scale slopers? Yuck!" And I love that she just said yuck, because that gives me something that I really want to talk to you about. So I want to make really clear, when I teach the pattern making course at Parsons or in my own, like in a live space, I'll use a lot of full scale patterns. Now, I also use a lot of quarter scale patterns to do exercises. This is an asymmetrical fitted bodice with like different seams, flat pattern. Yes, I went to Parsons and I've been teaching there since 1997. And the first class I ever taught at Parsons was pattern making in 1997, and it was a 6-hour class, which meant 3 hours in the morning, lunch, 3 more hours, and it was a year long at college. So it was 30 weeks of pattern making. So I have a really solid knowledge of that. I also taught draping, another 6-hour year-long class for 2 years. I actually had some really interesting students. I had Lazaro Hernandez and Mark, I'm forgetting their names, from Proenza Schooler. They were friends and they were in the same, they started draping with me in sophomore studio back in 2001 or something. Anyways, okay, so the reason you do not have to work miniature in the class, but I love that you can, because it means that anyone who's studying online who doesn't have a mannequin, who wants to internalize the skills and the understanding, can do that at their desktop or in their lap in a manageable space without wasting a lot of materials and supplies. Yes, it's very I'm interrupting myself with this comment here. I am so inspired by my students always. When I first started teaching, I taught in a BFA program, so the students were fresh out of high school, and I kind of had that feeling like I'm a teacher, they're the student. And very quickly, I changed my tune. I enjoyed teaching much more when I realized I'm a guide, and my students are always teaching me too. It's an exchange. It's not like a hierarchy. I think it makes such a difference when the student is honored for being a full person. They're not like incomplete. They've come to learn from you, but they bring so much to the table, and it's good to see what it is that they're bringing so you could bring it out. But if you work in small, then you can really work out the problems without big pieces of paper taking up your whole studio. If you have one, you might be at your kitchen table, depending who you are. And then it's almost like zooming out and getting a bird's eye view of what's going on. So like here's another example of like quarter scale pattern work that was done. Then seam allowance was added, quarter scale. And then I even traced, if I add seam allowance, I can pin together the pieces and get 3D. I can even pin together sample patterns that are quarter scale. Now, clearly I can't wear them, and I'm not dressing dolls. Thank you, Consuelo, I love you. But you get to see how things work without always having to work full size. However, you can work full size because in the online program I created, Patternmaking Demystified, you get a set of quarter scale patterns that you can print and use. But you also, I start the course entirely through draping. And let me clarify, because I think sometimes I scare people away because they think, oh, I don't have a mannequin. Oh God, I don't want to learn draping. I just want to learn pattern making. The reason I included draping in the pattern making class is A, because I've taught that in depth, but B, because whether you do it or not, as I walk you through it, you're understanding. You're going to watch, I would watch those videos several times because you hear the vocabulary, you see how I pin. There are different, oh, it's Melissa. Hi. Techniques of pinning that we use special ones for draping, different ones for pattern making, different ones for cutting, what kind of pins we use, how we pin. It's a language. It's all a language. It's so funny because I've been teaching fashion design since 97 and it never bores me for a second. Even the technical things are so exciting. It's such a magical craft. I mean, you're taking something two-dimensional, like fabric is like flat, right? And two-dimensional pattern. Well, what you're creating is three-dimensional, and it's like a liquid. Fabric is like liquid, right? Sometimes it's like paper, sometimes it's like liquid. And then when you put it on a human, it's one of the only arts that lives. It walks, it breathes, and it interacts with the soul of a human, right? So it's such an ultimate art form. If we look at it as an art form, which is what, when I say fashion, I like to think of it as a craft and a form of personal expression and creation, right? So I'm talking in circles. In the Pattern Making Demystified course, the very first thing I do, whether you have a mannequin or not, doesn't matter. You can get one and drape along with me, or you can just watch and listen, because I'm going to use vocabulary. We're going to discuss about the fabric grain and about key locations on the body that we use to talk about clothes. So whether you plan to make your own clothes, copy your own clothes, whether you plan to work in a museum, telling people about the clothes in the museum, whether you're writing a book about fashion, whether you write a column about fashion, as your vocabulary and your eye get trained, it's incredible because you start to get a whole new understanding in the way you look at clothes. You don't look at them the same anymore. You start to be able to have more of an analytical eye to, oh, look how they created this. Like even this shirt has such fun little details in it. You start to really appreciate what's going on in a design. So in the course, back to the question I didn't really answer yet, is quarter scale patterns are great for practice. It's almost like a first draft or a test run where you try out a concept small and you put it all in a notebook. You can have pages and pages within a notebook where you're working out experiments, and then you can apply them to large scale pattern. Where do you get a large scale pattern from? Well, The first videos of my course are all about draping your own patterns, but you don't have to. You at least should watch it. But if you have a mannequin, you can actually drape them. Not only do I show you how to drape them and explain about the grain and how fabric works, but I also show you, like I said, pinning techniques and then marking techniques. What do you, like, okay, you've draped a dress. How do you turn that into a pattern? Well, if you don't mark it properly, then when you take it down and put it on the table flat, you need marking, specific markings, so that when you take it down, it's actually a pattern. You know, where's the neckline? Where's the center front? How do we mark in such a way that when we take down what we draped, it translates into a pattern, instead of just you put it on the floor, on the table, and you're like, now what? I lost all my ideas. So we talk about marking, and then we talk about truing. So we take the pattern onto the tabletop. I show you this in the videos too. And I show you how we clean up our markings to create a full-size sloper. And like I said, a sloper is a pattern piece that has no seam allowance on it. And the reason for that is when you buy commercial patterns, they always have, I can't find my prettier slopers. Sorry, I have some prettier ones somewhere. Commercial patterns have only the cutting lines on them, seam allowance, cutting lines, so that when you cut out a pattern, you're kind of in the dark about where the seam lines are. When you make your own patterns, you know exactly where the sewing lines are and the seam allowance lines. And that means that when you work with a pattern that has no seam allowance on it yet, you can do all kinds of manipulations to it. You can add flares to it. You can add tiers to it. You can close the darts and make a yoke to go into a dartless skirt, or you can add vertical pleats or pin tucks. You can do all kinds of things, but you can't do that with a pattern that already has seam allowance on it. You understand? So these foundational blocks, you can create all these designs, and then you can, then when you're done designing, then you add seam allowance. And that's something you'll get to practice over and over in the course, whether you work full size or whether you work miniature, because I'm going to show you how to drape, mark, pin, remove, true, and then have your own set of slopers from your mannequin. The final challenge, the reason why I don't have everyone drape their original front and back skirt, front and back bodice, and sleeve. We also do collars, facings, darts, gathers, seam. We do a lot in the course. But the reason why I don't have you drafting your own slopers from your own body measurements from the get-go is because you can't work on your own body all by yourself that easily, right? At least for the mannequin, you can work with the mannequin. Or with the quarter scale slopers, you can do the techniques and build your confidence level. You get used to what problems or challenges come up, and you start to get your confidence about how being able to create smooth curves, being able to know if two things don't match up, how do you make them match up, where do you put your notches, why, how do you mark it, how do you label it. You get a confidence level going before you then start taking on bigger challenges like working on yourself. And actually, when it comes to making slopers for yourself, what I often recommend is making it from your favorite clothing. Taking your favorite, best fitting clothes. Even when I work for private clients, if I'm making a dress for somebody, I won't work from body measurements usually, or I will say, bring me your favorite. Thank you, Karen. She says, you look gorgeous today. And I'm thinking, how many times I don't come on here just because of how I look. And I so have to stop doing that, you know. But I try to dress up for you guys. But sometimes, I look in the mirror, I'm like, I would sure go live today, but I can't believe how tired I look or something. I totally want to break that mold because we all gotta like celebrate who we really are, right? But thank you, beautiful Karen. Um, yes, so whether you have a mannequin, or whether you don't, and you just want to work quarter scale, the point is it's almost irrelevant in the beginning. If you truly want to get a deeper understanding of what's going behind the scenes in the fashion, then learning these skills and this vocabulary is going to make it so deep for you. Let's see. You look happy and fabulous. Thank you. I have to confess, the reason why I feel and look that way is because I dressed up to see you guys. And I see you, so I feel that energy. It makes me really happy. So I have to tell you the truth. I'm energized by you. It's a very rainy day, and it's getting cold. And I'm like, you guys have given me seeing my dear friends here gives me a big burst of inspiration. And so I wonder if I covered what I wanted to say. I wanted to make it super clear that, having a quarter scale system means, oh no, I'm dropping things. Means, you can practice a draft in a notebook. Literally, you can have a journal. Here's like a puffy sleeve with a cuff, for example. I don't know about you guys. To me, what a nerd is they're the best people, because nerds are people who love something so much. They're so curious about it. They want to dive in deep and they want to know everything about it. Hang on a sec. And so a fashion nerd in this course would be so excited to try different things. Ooh, what if I put a bunch of gathers up here in this blouse? Having small scale patterns means you can work out styles small in a diary, in a journal, and then work them out here. Now, that's not required of you, but it's such a beautiful way to save time and space, nerding out and building your confidence, being like, oh, I did it. I can do it. Another thing I want to really mention, it's really important to me that I always say to my pattern making classes now, is that take the class, learn all these traditional techniques with darts and gathers and the grain and woven firm fabrics. But don't forget, so much of what we wear now is stretchy, has more give, has less darts because stretch just stretches. And that also, in fact, when I'm teaching pattern making, I'm always looking around the class so I can show students, like, I'll be teaching a concept and I'll be like, oh, look at so-and-so. You see their collar? That's da-da-da-da-da. But when I look around, everyone's wearing knits. It's an interesting thing to think about. And another thing to think about is I love to talk about ethnic clothing and historical and vintage clothing, like kaftan, kimono, things that really, really make sense flat. So learn all these techniques, but don't let them trick you into thinking that this has to be complicated. It can be extremely complicated, and you can do amazing complicated things, but it's not the only way, and it doesn't have to be that way. You get to decide. I just don't believe in this world anymore where it's so you decide, right? Are you not the creator? My attitude towards school isn't that you come in and you say, oh, whatever you say. No, you have a vision. You learn skills. Obsessed with historical clothing. Yes. Flaviolita. So we take a square of fabric. I mean, think about it. Historically, fabric was so sacred and so hand-loomed and beautiful that we minimally cut it. We didn't want to cut it. We wanted to keep it integral. Hi, Luisa. Oh my God, I'm so honored and touched to see you all. Você é espelho, Flavioleta. What was I gonna say? So when you start getting too heady and you start putting it into like something that's too complicated for you to access, remember that you are the creator. You can create, oh, Louisa. You can create your own techniques. I don't know if you ever heard of Shingo Sato. He's a Japanese pattern designer. TR Cutting School. He's amazing. I did a 3-day workshop with him for faculty at Parsons one day. He does all these magical things with patterns. But guess what? When you take his class, everything looks so complicated and so heady and so miraculous. But at the same time, when you're working with him, you realize, oh, I see what happened here. He spent time alone playing. That's what he did. And that's what I encourage you to do. When you get some skills and some knowledge, how to sew a little, how to mark a little, how the grain works, leave yourself alone with your patterns and your mannequin and your own clothes for hours, for days, and make your own techniques, make your own discoveries. I always say, let it come from within you. It's inevitable. It's inevitable. And that makes me want to share another story about a pattern making student I had a few years ago. She only made slip dresses. The simple bias cut, 2 little spaghetti strapped slip dresses. And she took the pattern making course because she wanted to learn more about like pants and shirts and collars and all the things. But at the same time, I realized as I spoke to her that it was almost like she felt like she had to do that, and that her heart was really in the slip dresses. And I wanted to make sure that I got to tell her, go ahead, do jackets, do fancy blouses, do trousers if you want. But if you are the slip dress lady, your brand could be entirely slip dresses. What happens? Season by season, you just keep going deeper into what fabrics you use, what trims you use, how they fit. Are they short? Are they long? Are they asymmetrical? Are they full? Are they tight? Right? Are they embellished? Are they simple? Are the colors like this? Are the colors like that? Do you develop your own prints? There's a million things you could do and only do slip dresses your whole life. Likewise, I talk a lot about Sandra Rhodes, who was a textile designer, who her mother was a fashion design professor, but Sandra Rhodes became I thought this was her book. I have an amazing book of hers I live stream about from time to time. She designed her own textiles, and again, her textiles were so precious that she didn't cut them a lot. And she learned by looking at ethnic historical clothing that's minimally cut, and really it's a lot about rectangles being stitched to rectangles, because fabric by nature is square or rectangular, right? If it's woven fabric. And I have to show you now, just some flat samples of her pieces. She was wildly famous, and she often worked with sheer chiffon. She would design her own prints with the finished garments in mind while she created her prints. And you take a piece like this, and you imagine what happens when someone wears that and it falls. Look at this. It's just rectangles. But it's magical, beautiful stuff. So never limit yourself. Never learn. I'll always say to my students, I'm teaching you all these techniques, but I pray, do not use them against you to limit you. Because this stuff is a little heady, it's a little techy, but underneath it all, what you're learning is how fabric works, where it wants to go, how you can mark it, how you can manipulate it. And it's up to you to, you're never missing too many skills, because you can always take the few skills you have and maximize them. So I teach skills all the time: illustration, model drawing, pattern making, draping, sewing. But skills is one thing. Who you think you are and how you see yourself creatively is another thing. Don't The mindset is most important, guys. Yeah? So I always want to remind you that you're a powerful creator. You are curious, you're adventurous, you're inspired. You came here to play. You came here to fall into flow. So when you're learning technical skills, it's not out of fear. Oh my gosh, my teacher is going to fail me. It's not about that. It's about, ooh, how does that work? And then how can I twist it into this? Twist it into that. And also, it depends when you're seeing this video, but right now, this weekend that I'm posting it, the pattern making course comes with 2 live one-to-one video sessions with me. Like, the course is pre-recorded, but you get 2 deep meetings with me. Okay, so I just got a comment from another artist, a great photographer, who, and that's so great that you're a photographer, because Louisa says mindset is so necessary, right? It's not just that Louisa knows how to take beautiful photos or knows the techniques of photography. It's her message. It's her story. As I'm saying that, you guys, I got goosebumps all over. It's her love of people. Goosebumps. And isn't fashion so linked to photography as well, right? Because how do we capture a moment? And one of the beautiful things about fashion is that it's so, like, it moves and it's gone. But photographers capture that. And they capture the humans in the clothes. So your clothes aren't just about clothes, they're about humans. Humans. Sacred, divine, beautiful, magical humans. I feel our purpose is to enhance that, enhance their lives. The clothes are functional as well as beautiful. Oh, it's so exciting. So if you're catching this later, please put like hashtag replay so that I know you caught the replay. If you've never been here before, please introduce yourself. If you have questions or comments related, I love to have a conversation with you. I'm so excited to take in new pattern making students and work with like what your different goals are, what your different backgrounds are. But whether you have a mannequin and you're going to work full size, plus size, men's, whatever, this foundation gets you all Nairobi. Oh my gosh. Everyone knows that it's my dream to visit African countries. I've never been to any yet. I lived in Paris and then I was like, fell madly in love with all the African culture that I found there. So I hope I can go to Nairobi someday. If you know a great designer from Nairobi, please share their names so we can look them up. Yeah, and my ideal also is that when you design, I recommend you design for yourself. At least sometimes, because who could you design better for than your own life, your own dreams, your own body, your own memories, your own sensations and experiences of clothing? That's another mindset thing, right? Keeping it personal, keeping it completely related to your own life, because you are the expert on your own experience. Right? It's kind of strange sometimes when we're always designing for some person who doesn't really exist. I'm going to read this comment right here. Yeah, I know many designers. Let me share their names shortly. I would love that if you share that. So to make it super clear, you don't need to have a mannequin to take this course. If you do have a mannequin, then you can drape and use your full size patterns for the whole course. But if you do not, don't worry, because you're going to have, it's given to you in the course, a small set of front and back skirt sloper, sleeve sloper, front and back bodice slopers, and you can use those to create blouses and plackets and facings and collars and sleeves of all shapes and sizes. That's the whole purpose of the course, so you know how to mark what are flares, what's circular flare, what are gathers, how do we create gathers, how do we create pleats, how do we mark pleats, how do we mark darts, How do we create panels in things? And as you know, if you're like me, it's like when you learn one concept, while you're learning it, your brain goes, gives birth to like 50 babies of new ideas, right? Would it work if I did this? Would it work when I did that? And for those of you who are illustrators or enthusiasts of fashion, it's going to really change. For example, when you're illustrating, you're going to be like, oh, those are gathers. Like sometimes you were just drawing like a mood, but now you start to really recognize, oh, there's the inseam, there's the outseam, oh, there's the fly, oh, the pocket, look at the pocket detail. Things that you wouldn't be so aware of if you didn't zoom into them. Fact is, we live in such a like fast-paced world, supposedly. But as one of my favorite teachers says, I don't know if he coined the phrase, Max Ryan, he said, to go fast, slow down. When we slow down and we take the time to because there's a lot of stimulation in the fast world, and we become almost numb. When you slow down and you watch the videos, you may not do all the assignments. You may do one or two. But those one or two that you sink into and you dive into with sincere curiosity, sincere love, sincere purpose, or just literally in the flow state of like enjoying yourself, I believe that pleasure and play are the fuel of our best work. Not pushing and crying and no. Get back to that. Most of us who became fashion designers started out having that joy from a very young age as kids. There's a large spirit of play and joy in it. Don't lose that. Don't lose that. To me, that's the most precious element of what you do. That true love. And even if it's gotten buried in people telling you can't do that, or you have to do it this way, you will get led back to yourself. And that's a beautiful part of the journey. And I hope to be helpful in helping you hear and see yourself and hone your craft. You can work small or you can work large. And also in Pattern Making Demystified course, in the middle of the course, there's like a personal project where you can either copy something you own, draft a pattern from something you see in a magazine picture. Thank you, Rachel. You are so inspirational. Thank you so much. Thanks for stopping by. Whether you just want to create, draft from scratch a pattern set based on your own measurements, those are the three main ways you could do the project. For some of you, I recommend that you would take those 2 free sessions and use them entirely for that personal project. So that as you're doing the project and you run into some roadblocks, that's what we could work on together. Yeah, because meeting you guys personally and tapping into what motivates you inspires me. That's where the magic is. Inspires you. Does anyone have any questions? I don't even know if I was able to clarify what I meant to. Oh, I guess one thing I was thinking was that I'll also show you some tools that we use for the class. Like you would want a pattern wheel. You want dressmaker pins. Not these pins. These pins are great for sewing and for pinning maybe paper, But for draping, you need sturdy dressmaker pins. Which means, look, they're pretty darn strong. They're strong. These pins, these are actually pretty good for, I guess, pinning tissue paper or something. But look, they're like tin foil. They're like super fine, so they're super weak. And if you try to drape with those, you're going to go crazy. That's what I think. I don't recommend them at all. Oh, and the ways I teach you to pinning is so important, because when I have new students who don't know how to pin yet, I end up bleeding all the time when I'm in a classroom, because when you don't pin right, you really get hurt by your pins all the time. And I guess I'll give you a tip for that right now. When you pin when you pin something to something else or to itself, whether you're working with paper, whether you're working with the garment, always pin the tiniest amount possible. Okay, people tend to grab a big piece of fabric and pin up like a big long inch. But when you pin big long chunks and you have a metal rod like a pin through the middle, that's not how threads act, right? Stitches are tiny, an eighth of an inch or smaller. If you pin tiny, then everything you pin will be flexible like a stitch. Look at this. I swear I just pinned like 2 threads. And then the other thing is, don't stick your pin all the way so it's sticking out. That's how you end up bleeding, maimed, or hurt. And you don't want to hurt your teacher or yourself. But if you pin with just the tip, and the tip is so close to what you pinned, you can't even get hurt on it. You just can't even. And the other beautiful thing about pinning this way is that pins that are barely in are very easy to pull out. So when you're like adjusting things and you're in the flow and you're moving things around, your pins are very easy to access, to put out and in and out and in. But if they've all been jammed in and stiff and long, you know, it becomes like kind of an arduous process. I guess I'll wrap this up. I'm sure it's very long. I hope I made the point that one point is that look at ethnic clothing like kimonos and kaftans and old early clothing where fabric was so honored and respected that it wasn't cut much. And just look at it, because those roots, I have some videos about that in the course, but those kinds of foundations will help you remember you can always dial back and work with your instinct. Beautiful clothes do not have to be incredibly complex. They also can. Just remember that someone will always have to make them. Kindness is a beautiful thing. I love to sketch really complex ideas and work out complex things. But when I'm making and sewing, I like to be able to make something in a day. I like to be able to make something with minimal seams, where it's more about the proportion or the way it fits me or the print or something like that, you know. Everyone's values are different because we all have different goals. Same with sketching and illustration and design. What's your end game? What's your goal? And that can change all the time. That's okay too. I'd love if you share with me what some of your goals and purposes are for why you want to learn fashion design. I just think it's the most exciting art form ever. And I love that feeling of creating something that I can just wear. And after I learned pattern making and draping, I never bought a commercial pattern again. Never. Nope. What I would do instead is, if I find a garment on anywhere on a hanger where I'm like, oh, I love this. To me, that's a pattern, because I know I can go home and make a pattern from something that exists. And I'm more likely to do that, because when you buy paper patterns, you don't even know if they're going to fit. You really don't. When I used to buy paper patterns, it wasn't until the thing was done that I would know that it didn't fit. How much better to try on a garment and then be like, oh, it fits, and then make a pattern from it, right? Yeah. So you can take this course and work mini, or you can work full scale, because we will be draping front and back bodice, front and back skirt, and sleeve all in the course, except for the sleeve. Because the one thing I haven't figured out how to put in the course yet is the pattern for this stuffed arm. Yeah, I have a pattern, but I don't know how to get it to you. You know, I guess I could make a printable PDF. I gotta think about that. We can talk more about it, ask me. So maybe you won't be draping the sleeve. Maybe you'll just be drafting the sleeve. But that's okay. And it works. You're going to see how it works. You can even just take a sleeve pattern off one of your own favorite garments, and I'll teach you how to copy it, and then you can use and reuse that. Okay, so I'm going to wrap this up. Before I do, I'm just going to say, Connie, how are you doing? We live in the same state now. I thought maybe we'd get to see each other this summer when I was out in your area. but we gotta find a way. We gotta find a way. And you're a designer. I love your designs and I love your prints. Connie, your prints are so beautiful. I'm a print lover. There's just no two ways about it. If you need any information about how this course works or anybody, just let me know. And yeah, we have to. It's been such a crazy time. But then I always say, this is my big thing with everything that's going on in the world right now, when people say, oh, I'm just waiting for life to go back to whatever. I always, as soon as I hear that, I always remember, this is life. This is life. Not on pause, not on temporary. Whatever it is, this is it now. This is your life. This is our life. This is our time. Today, here, now. So, whew, it's so wonderful to like fall into the present moment and not be waiting for something in the distance. I mean, that's good too. Like, hold your visions. But life is now, and this is real life. This is real life, which is quite dreamy when we let it be. Yeah. Oh, geez. Josh just showed up with all these colors. Great fall palette, Josh. We're just wrapping up. The thing with Instagram Lives is they don't really tell us how long it's been. So I don't know. And actually, Josh is in Fashion Sketch Group. So I guess I'll plug that while we're here. We meet on Wednesdays from 2 to 4 with models and music and mood and imagination. And we sketch and we sketch and we sketch. And we have such a good time. It's a very cozy, very small group. It's a subscription, so people just sign up, and we meet every week. Except this week, because my neighbors were like jackhammering up their patio so they could build a new one. So I went to teach, and it was like, and I said, oh, not today. You joined earlier. Oh, good. I just saw you pop in now. Andrea. Wait, Andrea. How are you? I miss you too. Thank God for these crazy platforms, which, I feel like social media is that reminder that everything here on earth has a positive side and a negative side, can be used for good or for bad. And when I come in and I see all your faces, I know that's good. And there's so many good teachers here, giving support and spreading light and helping one another and educating and creating communities that help us, And then there's a whole other side, like this whole recent, I'm so glad, all the research that's coming out about Facebook and Instagram. And let's just, whenever we walk into these arenas, just let's remember, nothing's all good or all bad. Even the things that we think are all good have their dark side. And the things that we think are all bad often have a good side. So be gentle and trust your own inner knowing and aim for what feels good for you. And what feels good for me is connecting with you guys from all different places in my life. I notice if I'm on Facebook, I'll see one group of people I know and love. If I'm on Instagram, it's another group. And back in Periscope days, that was a whole other community. We didn't have any of this when I was in school and stuff. I didn't even have a beeper back in the 90s. So anyway, I love you all, and thanks for being with me. Let me know if there's something else you'd like me to share about. I was thinking of marking this and clipping it and like showing all that stuff, but I wanted this to be just more informational. All of that is also in the class. Oh, the pattern making class has a bunch of tutorials on the sales page. So if you can't join us, you can still just watch them and glean what you got from there, because like how to make a facing and stuff. And also on Instagram TV, I have a 2-part video about the mannequin and like what these tapes and seams mean and what we call the different geographical locations that we use when we talk about patterns and draping. So all of that is available for you to enjoy. In fact, I think I'm going to link those videos onto my sales page too. I had forgotten about that. Yes. Okay. And this special where you get 2 video sessions with me with your pattern making class was going to end at midnight tonight. But since I didn't get the live stream till today, I'm going to extend that till Wednesday night. Okay. I love you. Send me an emoji anytime. I look forward to meeting some of you this fall.